Now, we're really privileged to be joined on the line now by award-winning journalist and presenter John Stapleton, who is also one of the high-profile supporters of Parkinsons UK. John Stapleton, how are you?
I'm very good shape, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you very much for coming on. Firstly, John, how important is it, do you think, that people donate to Parkinsons UK?
I think it's terribly important. I know times are difficult for a lot of people, a lot of jams around, as they're called, people just about managing, as the government describes them. But nevertheless, if they can find a few bob to help Parkinson's, that would be absolutely terrific. It's a terrible, terrible illness. They're working constantly on ways to find or methods to alleviate it, if not a cure. And anything that can be done in that direction would have my wholehearted support, and I hope it has the support of a lot of other people too.
Now, you're, of course, one of the high-profile supporters of Parkinsons UK. How did you become involved with this particular charity?
I became involved very simply because my mother had Parkinson's. June, my mother was a very outgoing, ebullient sort of person, and a teacher, a supply teacher in her professional life, a very jolly person, and as she grew older, obviously she changed a little bit, and I noticed that her hand began shaking, and we discussed it, and we went to see a specialist not far from where we live, and he was quite frank about it. He had no doubt about it. Yes, she was in the early stages of Parkinson's. He said it would probably take about 5 years to set in fully, and he was absolutely spot on right. And over that 5-year period, I saw a very slow but very positive deterioration in my mother, turning from this, as I say, outgoing, ebullient sort of person into someone who became effectively a prisoner in her own home. It was very, very sad to see. The shake became worse and worse. It got to the stage where she couldn't do very simple things like open a can of beans. She couldn't use a tin opener. And it's very, very frustrating to watch. I mean, I was there to help, and I might have to say the local authority were very helpful as well. But she went downhill, and she got to the point where she used to say to me, I've had my time, I've had my time. She didn't want to live any longer. And that was a really, really sad thing to see. In the end, she was taking about 14 tablets a day, not all of them obviously down to Parkinson's. She had other complications and other problems as well. And some of the tablets she took for Parkinson's, which will be people listening who've had family members who've had Parkinson's will know about this. Some of those tablets had quite worrying side effects, but it was difficult for all of us, and especially difficult for her. A very, very sad thing to see.
I imagine that's something that, having watched a family member do it, you don't want anyone else to have to go through.
No, absolutely not. I mean, they will go through it. Thousands of people that go through it every year, and there is help around. It's patchy, obviously. It's a bit of a postcode lottery, as most things are. But certainly, my local authority, we're very helpful indeed, and in assisting Mum with things like aids to get in and out of the bath, and little things around the house that enable her to get about more easily than she would otherwise have been able to do once Parkinson's set in. So, yeah, it's very, very difficult for the whole family, and it is one of those things that affects not just the person who's got it, but other family members as well.
Now, I read an article, I'm not sure how true this is, but apparently you've donated your brain to science after this particular incident. Would you like to expand a bit more on that?
It is true, actually. Funny enough, that story was the idea of Parkinson's. That they got me, Jeremy Paxman, and one other person whose name will come to mind. Jane Usher, that's it. That's right. Jane Usher, the actress who makes wonderful cakes. The three of us, because we've all had people in our families who've suffered from Parkinson's, and they had the idea that if we could donate our brains to research, then one day someone might be able to find a cure. And I said, well, fine by me. If you can find my brain, you're very welcome to it. But it was a great idea, which radiated a lot of publicity. I mean, I sort of Googled it sometime afterwards, and it made the China Morning Post. I mean, the story went worldwide, absolutely staggering. So, whether they find my brain or not doesn't really matter. It got a lot of publicity for Parkinson's and made more people aware of the problem.
Now, moving slightly away from Parkinson's, obviously we're a student radio station here. Do you have any advice for students interested in pursuing a career such as yours in broadcasting or presenting?
I jokingly say, forget all about it, marry money instead. But no, it's very simple advice. If you really want to do it, you got to work at it. I applied to 33 local newspapers before I got a job when I was 17 years old, and 90% of them never even replied to my letters. You've got to be tough. You've got to be determined, The best advice I could give is, get yourself some work experience. First and foremost, read the newspapers, watch the television programs, or listen to the radio programs you're keen on working for, so you know what you're actually talking about if and when you get an interview. Apply for work experience. There's nothing to replace it. It happens all the time these days. It didn't happen when I was a kid, but it happens all the time these days. Get some work experience, and bear in mind it's not easy. Thousands of people apply for jobs in the media. Everyone thinks it's deadly glamorous. It has its glamorous aspects, but it's also damned hard work and dull and boring and routine a lot of the time as well. So don't be disillusioned about it. But if you're really determined to do it, my suspicion is that you'll get there in the end. I wrote my 33 letters. I got there in the end.
We're going to go now to a slightly fun quickfire round just to get to know you, John.
Yes.
So, firstly, what's your favourite food?
Mrs. Stapleton's a fabulous cook, and she does a wonderful lamb with aubergines. That's my favourite food at home. Outside of home, we have a fabulous Indian restaurant nearby where they do a thing called lamb sagwali, which is lamb with spinach. Oh, not spaghetti. Lamb with spinach, which I have every single time I go there.
What's your favourite TV programme?
I'm currently watching and catching up on something I missed in the 80s or 90s. I can't remember what it was. The Sopranos. I just love it. I think we've seen about 15 episodes of it so far. Very, very keen on The Sopranos. Obviously love Match of the Day because I'm a big football fan, but The Sopranos right now is top of my list.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Sopranos, but I don't approve of Manchester City, John.
We'll come to that in a minute.
Any hobbies?
Yeah, watching Manchester City, funny enough. Week in, week out, home and away, whenever I can. My grandfather was at the very first game they ever played in 1923, so it was inevitable I followed suit. And our son, who's now 29 years old, is an even bigger City nut than I am, believe it or not.
Just on City, what do you make of the transformation of that club? Because obviously you've supported them for a while now, and they've undergone quite a transition to one of the wealthiest clubs in the world.
And there are some people who still yearn after the good old days or bad old days when we would battle to avoid relegation every year. Quite frankly, I love it. We've waited a long time for our day in the sun, and long may it last.
And lastly on City, what do you make of Pep?
Interesting, actually. A very, very nice guy from what I can see. I've never met him, but he's a very, very nice guy. He's a brilliant football manager, remains a brilliant football manager, but I think he's learned a lesson. I think this is, the Premier League's proving a little bit harder than he imagined. One thing I would say for him, to his eternal credit, he never criticises his players. He always says it's my fault. So I take my hat off to him on that front.
When you've presented either a radio show or GMTV, do you have any pre-show rituals or habits?
Not really. I mean, the last show I did for about 17 years was GMTV, which became Good Morning, which became Daybreak, which became Good Morning Britain, call it what you will. And I presented that for many years with Penny Smith, who's a wonderful, wonderful lady, who used to walk in. I mean, I would always walk into the studio at least 5 minutes before to make sure everything was okay, etc., etc. I felt comfortable with it. Penny would walk in with about 3 seconds to go. She couldn't have been more different. Plonk herself down next to me, and as the title music finished, she'd open her mouth and speak. So I was the routine. When I was the boring one, I always insisted on getting there early, as I do for everything, football matches, everything, airports, whatever. She was completely the opposite.
Very organised. Who's the most impressive person you've worked with?
Well, I go back to Penny Smith. Penny Smith is a wonderfully bright, cheery, very, very funny, amusing woman to work with. The great thing about Penny was, and doing a live show, was you never knew what was coming next. She'd say things and you'd turn and think, what? You had no idea what was coming next. Where's that come from? What on earth are you talking about? But she had a great sense of humour and is a very, very professional broadcaster.
What's the most difficult thing you've had to report on as part of your job?
Well, I've had to cover wars. I've been to Iraq. I was in Iraq. I was there for the Gulf War. I was in Kuwait actually for the Gulf War, but we were getting hit by Scud. Kuwait was attacked with Scud missiles by Saddam Hussein at the time, and I was in Iraq 5 years later. And not many people sort of even realise this, but 5 years later we were on with the army at Basra. And the army in Basra were under rocket attack daily. I mean, 4 or 5 rocket attacks per day sometimes, and that was not funny at all. Now, when I'm talking rockets, I'm not talking fireworks. I'm talking rockets that are about the length of one of your university buildings, coming over 1,000 miles an hour. That was not funny at all. So, in terms of difficult, that was probably top of the league.
And just lastly, have you got a song request for us to play?
Well, I'm a great fan of the Eagles. Yeah, so anything from the Eagles. My favourite Eagles number is Take It to the Limit, but Hotel California, take your pick. My name's John Stapleton, and you're listening to Raw's Parkinson's Appeal 2017.